Judge Franklin Thatcher made a point of letting the white folks slide. But for the black woman in the tailored suit, he had a special kind of venom saved up. He just dismissed two white men, one a kid, one an old-timer, with a folksy smile and a theatrical wink for being late. Now his gaze settled on the black woman standing ramrod straight in her tailored suit. The smile evaporated from his face. Here we go, the judge thought, a familiar, ugly feeling tightening his chest. Probably got her job through some diversity hire initiative. Walks in here with a $1,000 briefcase and a chip on her shoulder the size of Atlanta. Thinks she's the same as everyone else. He tapped his gavel once, a sharp, proprietary sound. Timed her reminder of the rules. He let her stand in silence for a long moment, shuffling papers he wasn't reading. Finally, he looked up, feigning surprise. Well now, look what we have here. Am I pronouncing this right? Miss Ramsay? He asked, deliberately butchering the name. The clock on that wall, the official clock of Wakefield County, says you were due in my courtroom 15 minutes ago. Does that fancy watch of yours run on a different kind of time? Leah Ramsay's expression remained perfectly neutral, her composure a shield. My apologies for my tardiness, Your Honor. The name is Ramsay. I was unavoidably detained on a federal matter. Detained? Thatcher echoed, savoring the word as he leaned into his microphone. That's a mighty big word. Must have been a real 5-alarm fire over at the bureau. He made air quotes with his fingers. Tell me, was someone's paperwork filed using the wrong color ink? Was it a full-blown stapler crisis? The sycophantic chuckles from the front row were right on cue. Let me be clear, Miss Ramsay, Thatcher said, his voice suddenly booming through the courtroom. Your schedule does not matter here. Your title does not matter here. The only thing that matters is my authority. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that still reached every corner of the room. And your contempt for it is going to cost you $950, payable immediately. Leah felt the impact like a physical blow, but her face betrayed nothing. This isn't about being late, she analyzed internally. This is a performance, a public shaming staged by a man whose power feels threatened by the color of my skin. He's making an example of me. Her own case, a fraudulent lien on the home her grandmother had lived in for 70 years, suddenly felt 1,000 miles away. Your Honor, she began again, her voice crisp and clear. If you would permit me to explain the official government business that caused the delay, the gavel crashed down. I will not. That fine is your lesson for the day. Now, what is this other minor complaint you brought before me? Leah took a single calming breath and approached the podium again. She could feel the eyes on her, the judgment thick in the air. The mission had changed. This was no longer a personal errand. It was now a professional obligation. The matter concerns a fraudulent lien placed on a private residence, Your Honor, she stated, opening her portfolio. The city has assessed a 50% valuation increase without any legal basis. Thatcher waved a dismissive hand. File it with the clerk. I'll look at it when I have the time. Right now, we're discussing your failure to respect this court. I assure you, sir, my respect for the law is absolute. Leah's voice was pure ice. My delay was a direct result of my duties as the lead agent on a federal public corruption task force. The judge's eyes narrowed into hateful slits. Your job titles are worthless in this room. The law is the law. Indeed it is, Leah agreed, her gaze locking onto his. Which is why, for the official court record, I must ask a clarifying question. Is the penalty for tardiness the same for every single citizen who stands in this courtroom? A collective inhale swept the room. Mrs. Albright, the court clerk, went rigid, her fingers frozen above her keyboard. Thatcher's face turned a dangerous shade of purple. Are you accusing me of bias in my own courtroom, girl? He hissed, the venom dripping from every word. I am simply ensuring the record is clear, sir, Leah replied, her tone unshakable, so that no one could ever mistake justice in this county for anything less than impartial. The gavel slammed down again and again, the frantic pounding echoing his fury. I will not be lectured by you. The fine stands. Get out of my courtroom. Thank you for your time, Your Honor, Leah said, her face an emotionless mask. She calmly collected her papers and turned. As she walked out, a sea of faces watched her. some scared, some smug. But near the door, a black man in greasy coveralls met her gaze. He didn't smile. He just nodded once. It was a nod that said, "We see it. We always see it." Under the sweltering Georgia sun, Leah knew this was bigger than the fine, bigger than the lean. This was a sickness in the heart of the system. She reached for her phone to call her boss, Assistant Director Croft, but her hand stopped. This deserves more than a phone call. This warrants a personal visit. She turned and walked back into the courthouse, her heels clicking with cold purpose. Judge Thatcher was still on the bench, basking in the afterglow of his little power play. When Leah Ramsay walked back to the podium, his face soured. He thought he had won. He was about to find out the game had just begun. "The court is adjourned, Ramsay," he snapped. "If you have something else to say, take it up with the clerk." "I won't be taking it up with the clerk, Your Honor." Leah's voice was unnervingly quiet, yet it carried a new weight that made Officer Kent, the bailiff, stand a little straighter. "Because my business is with you, I feel it's my duty to introduce myself. Properly." She held up her credentials. In the dim, oppressive light of the courtroom, the golden eagle of the Department of Justice seemed to catch fire. "My name is Leah Ramsay. I am a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. For the last 12 years, my sole focus has been investigating public corruption and federal civil rights violations." The blood seemed to drain from Judge Thatcher's face, leaving behind a pale, waxy mask of arrogance. The petty tyrant, who had puffed up his chest just moments before completely deflated, shrinking into his high-backed leather chair. He looked like a man who had just been told his entire world was a fraud. "The reason I was late," Leah continued, her voice cold and clinical, each word a precision-cut diamond, "was that I was personally signing the operational plan for a federal anti-corruption sting. And while I was waiting for my case to be called, I observed certain procedural inconsistencies." She retrieved a small notepad from her portfolio. "So I took notes. I documented 2 instances of judicial leniency granted to Caucasian males, and 1 instance of punitive and biased sentencing directed at an African-American female. Myself." Thatcher's lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. "If you have a complaint, there are official channels for that. As a sworn federal officer, I am legally obligated to report any potential criminal activity I witness," Leah stated, her voice as hard as granite. "And what I witnessed in this room today, sir, wasn't a complaint. It was a textbook example of a potential violation of United States Code, Title 18, Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law." The silence that followed was absolute. Mrs. Albright, the clerk, stared with wide, terrified eyes. Judge Thatcher looked small, exposed, and weak. You can go now, Ms. Ramsay," he stammered, his voice a choked whisper. Leah slowly slid her credentials back into her coat. "Thank you, Your Honor," she said, letting the words hang in the air like a final verdict. "Rest assured, this entire matter will now be handled properly." That night, a single encrypted file landed on the desktop of Assistant Director Croft. The phone call came at 9 a.m. sharp the next morning. "Leah, I read the report," Croft's voice was all business. "If he was this blatant with a federal agent, this isn't a one-off. This is a pattern. This is rot." "It is," Leah confirmed. "He was proud of it." A sharp sigh came through the line. "All right, I'm kicking this upstairs to the State Commission on Judicial Conduct. We are lighting the fuse. Effective now." Croft's tone softened for a fraction of a second. "I want his entire judicial history. Every ruling, every fine, every appeal. When this bomb goes off, I want to be holding the trigger." The call ended. Leah's war had begun. She plunged into years of digital archives and courthouse records. It didn't take long for a sickening, undeniable pattern to emerge. Fines for minor infractions were, on average, a staggering 5 times higher for Black and Hispanic defendants than for white defendants who committed the exact same offenses. Within a week, the Commission's investigators arrived at the Wakefield County Courthouse. They were quiet men in unassuming suits, and they hit pay dirt almost immediately. The court clerk, a nervous woman named Mrs. Albright, pulled the lead investigator aside. "There's something you need to see," she whispered, her hands trembling as she unlocked a bottom desk drawer. She pulled out a worn black ledger. "Ma'am, you took a tremendous risk keeping this." "Why?" the investigator asked gently. Mrs. Albright clutched the book to her chest. "My son is a good boy," she said, her eyes welling with tears. "He's the same age as a kid Judge Thatcher fined into bankruptcy last month over a busted taillight. Every time he ruined a life, I saw my son's face. I couldn't throw it away. I had to believe that someday someone would come looking for it." The ledger was a bombshell, a meticulous handwritten log of the judge's most egregious and racist comments, rulings, and fines. A secret diary of his reign of terror. Her story was quickly backed up by the veteran bailiff, Officer Kent. "I've had a front row seat to the Franklin Thatcher show for 25 years, he told them, his voice thick with shame. "Watched him break people for sport because of the color of their skin. I knew it was poison, but I cashed my paycheck and looked the other way." While the investigation unfolded inside, the story exploded outside. It started with a single furious post from a pre-law student who had been in the back row. By noon, the story was on every local blog. By evening, the local news station's social media page was hemorrhaging with raw, painful Judge Thatcher stories. One story cut deeper than the rest. A single mother racing her son to his chemotherapy appointment was pulled over for a broken taillight. In court, Judge Thatcher hit her with a crippling $200 fine. When she tried to explain, he cut her off, sneering, "Save your sob story. In my experience, your kind always has one ready." Her ordeal became the symbol of his long, cruel reign. The local news sealed his fate. The headline, "Bias on the Bench," went primetime, and the pressure became unbearable. Thatcher issued a weak statement about being misconstrued, but he was already a man running out of air. By the end of the week, Croft called. Her voice was grim. "The numbers are in. It's an undeniable pattern of discrimination." "What's the end game?" Leah asked. "An emergency session of the disciplinary board," Croft replied. "They want you there to witness the execution." The final reckoning wasn't public. It was a cold, sterile conference room, faced with a media firestorm, the damning ledger, and the cold, hard data. Thatcher sat at one end of a long table, utterly alone. At the other end sat the board and Special Agent Leah Ramsay. Chief Justice Holloway slid a thick folder in front of him. "Franklin, we've seen it all. The ledger, the testimony, the numbers. It's one of the most disgusting abuses of power this board has ever seen." Thatcher started to bluster. "This is a misunderstand." "Save it," Holloway cut him off, her voice like ice. "The time for lies is over. You have two choices. Option 1, you sign this resignation and vanish. Option 2, we hold a public hearing, strip you of your judgeship, and I personally hand this file to the Department of Justice. Agent Ramsay here will oversee your federal prosecution, and you will go to prison." The threat was a death sentence. Thatcher's face went slack. He looked at Leah, pleading for mercy. He found only the cold, unblinking stare of a federal agent. The bully inside him evaporated, leaving a pathetic, broken shell. A resignation letter was placed before him. His hands shook as he signed, the scratching of the pen the only sound in the room. With a single, shaky signature, his career was over. As he stood to leave, an official stepped forward. "Sir, your ID and judicial credentials." Humiliated, Thatcher fumbled in his wallet, his hands trembling. He slapped the cards on the table and walked out of the room, a disgraced man who learned the hard way that you never know who you're picking a fight with.